Major support for Do the Math has been provided by CHEVRON, the Kern County Superintendent of Schools, EDISON International, Valley Strong Credit Union, California Resources Corporation, Bakersfield West Rotary STROOPE Family Foundation, Panama Buena Vista Union School District, Bakersfield City School District, Kern High School District, and AC Electric Company, with additional production assistance provided by these supporters of education in Kern County and throughout the state of California.
We are here at Longfellow Elementary School, home of the Lancers, and today we're here to... Do the Math! We're here at Longfellow Elementary School, right around the corner of Union and Niles. A bustling campus today. A lot of their finest 5th and 6th graders joining us here to work with our show today. Very excited. I believe it might be the first time we visited Longfellow with the show and have nothing but great things to say about the hospitality here. The enthusiasm, the energy to work with us, and that's good because we're going to do something today that we have never done before on Do the Math. We are going to attack the info gap. So if you're familiar with the pyramid game show where one person has information and they have to give clues, it's kind of the reverse of that. So we're going to go ahead and introduce you to our star in the hot seat for our first segment here. Hi there, what's your name?
Aaliyah.
Aaliyah, thank you for joining us. When we said that we needed somebody to sit in this seat, you raised your hand almost before I finished my sentence and question. So what made you want to sit in this spot here today to start us off?
I don't know. I was just too excited.
She's too excited. Did you hear that, everybody? Well, that may change by the time we start. We'll find out. Not trying to scare anybody here. But, you know, this is something that is relatively new as far as a way to approach problem solving. So, let me kind of explain how this is going to work here. On our front board is going to be some information and a question. And there's going to be some details missing. Meanwhile, Aaliyah's got her own device here. And on this, she's going to have some information. She's not going to see the question. She's not going to see the rest of the problem. There's going to be some information there. Now, this class is going to have to ask some questions about the information they need to solve the problem. Aaliyah is going to make sure to ask, why do you need that information? And our class has to be able to explain what their plan is for using that information so that if she has it or not, she can give that information to them. And then, it's time to solve that problem. Now, you solve that however you want, and we'll work through it, and we'll see along the way where you stand. Are you ready to attack the info gap? Yes. So, this is the first problem we're going to see for the day, just to kind of warm us up into it. Aaliyah, could you go ahead and tap forward? Here is your question. An art teacher bought boxes of crayons at a store. Each box contains the same number of crayons. How many crayons did she buy? Now, generally, I'm not supposed to read that aloud because now she heard it, but we're going to kind of go along with it. We're going to pretend that she never heard anything. Did you hear anything?
No.
No, I didn't hear anything either, guys. What? Who said something? Nothing. Okay, so your job is to ask Aaliyah questions about the information you need to solve this problem. If you have a question, raise your hand. Let's go right over here. Ask her.
How many crayons are in the box?
Now, why do you need that information?
So I could add it up. I don't know.
Oh, okay. So he's going to use adding to help this. His question was, how many crayons are in a box?
64.
So she said that there are 64 crayons in a box. Some people are writing that information down. That's very helpful to record that information as you hear it, right? Okay? So some people see that as important information, that there are 64 crayons in a box. If you need more information, make sure you ask our guest in the hot seat, Aaliyah. We have a hand up right over here.
How many boxes of crayons did she buy?
Okay.
The teacher bought 4 boxes.
So, now why did you ask how many boxes she bought. Why did you feel like that would be helpful?
Because in the question it says that she bought boxes, but it doesn't state the exact number that she bought them.
So if you knew that number, how does that help you?
Because each box has 64 crayons and 4 boxes. So basically, I just wanted to know how many boxes so we could either add up the crayons in each box.
So you're saying I need to know, now that I know how many crayons are in each box, how many boxes there are so I can add that number together that many times. That's an interesting strategy. Is there another strategy that somebody's planning on using to figure this out? Go right ahead.
So since there's like 4 boxes of crayons and there's 64 crayons in each box, you can multiply 64 times 4.
Okay, so we hear 2 different approaches towards this. You guys go ahead and jump into this, okay? Now that you feel like you have the information you need, go ahead and start solving. Is there any other information that you feel like you need to solve this problem or to get started with this problem? If not, the floor is all yours. Go ahead and work on that. And meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and check in with Aaliyah here. So, without knowing what that question was, just seeing this information here, did you kind of start to imagine what that question would be?
Yeah.
Are there other questions maybe that you could see this as, that you could solve or figure out based on this?
Like, when I saw this, I kind of saw, like, maybe, like, multiplication or division.
I could also see this almost as like a ratio problem, right? Like, what is the
Yeah,
ratio
like,
of crayons to boxes?
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting things that our mind starts to put together when we just have information without the question in mind. So let's go ahead and start to see how everybody is rolling through with some of these. We have some strategies of people that are multiplying here using that standard algorithm. We have some repeated addition happening in place, but generally everybody that's starting to work towards this is ending up in a real good spot with their solution. Let's go ahead and just on the count of 3, shout out your answer here. How many crayons did she buy? 1, 2, 3.
256!
256 crayons. We just jumped that info gap. When we come back, we're going to dig a little bit deeper for round 2. Back here at Longfellow Elementary School, wonderful group of 5th and 6th graders attacking the info gap. In our first segment, we looked at the structure of how students can use missing information to formulate questions to help them approach solving a problem in their own way, because they're pretty good at coming up with a plan if they know what they're looking for and why they're looking for it. So, we've got a new member of the hot seat right here. Ready for question number 2, sir? Thank you for joining us. What's your name?
Justin.
Justin, you decided you wanted to jump into the hot seat after our first round. What made this appealing to you?
Because I love math. This is one of my favorite subjects.
Well, we'll see how much you love it after this problem. Okay. However, you're really just giving the information here. However, once you have some clarity and maybe can start to figure out what everybody's working on, you might be able to figure that yourself. So, with that said, are we ready for question number 2?
Yes!
So Justin, on the count of 3, I'm going to ask you to tap forward. This time around, I am not going to read that question out loud to you. Okay? You're on your own. I'm going to give our audience a little bit of time to read the problem. But I want to make sure that everybody is going to be clear. This time, you're on your own. In 3, 2, 1, question 2. So, while we're waiting, write down some of the information you want to ask about. What information do you want to ask Justin to share with you? And be sure to talk about why. What do you need that information to do? What is your plan for this? Justin, how do you feel about the information at hand? Do you feel like you'll be able to share this? Mm-hmm. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's share out. What information do you need from Justin? Let's go right over here.
How much chocolate does Ryan has?
Now, why do you need that information?
I need it because it says he divides it into equal parts, but before I know how much that is, I have to know exactly how much chocolate he has.
So, Justin, she's asking how much chocolate Ryan has. Do you have that information to share?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and share that information.
1/2
1/2 what?
of pounds of chocolate.
So a 1/2 pound of chocolate. Very interesting. A 1/2 pound of chocolate. People are writing this down because a lot of people apparently needed that information. Okay. What other information do you need to ask in order to start working this out? Let's go right back there in the far corner of the class. Yes.
Well, how much chocolate does Ryan have cut into equal parts? Is it an even number or an odd number?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. When Ryan has to divide it, is the number he's going to divide it going to be even or odd? Now, why is that information important to you?
Okay, I can know which number it is, and I can solve it with multiplication or addition or subtraction.
Okay. So,
subtraction.
Justin, he's asking you whether the number of parts he's dividing it into is even or odd. Can you share that information with him?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Even.
So, the number of parts he's going to divide it into is even. Is there any other information you'd like to ask for Justin here before we go ahead and start solving? Go ahead.
How many equal parts of chocolate does he split it into?
So you're going further. How many equal parts is he? Not just simply even or odd, but how many equal parts? Are you able to share that information?
Yes.
Okay.
4.
So he has 1/2 pound of chocolate, and he's dividing it into 4 equal parts. So with this information, do you feel like you have a plan for how you're going to figure out this question? How much chocolate is in each part? Okay? So go ahead and start working that out. I'm going to be really curious to see how you explore this because this isn't necessarily something that you have to just use an algorithm with. You can draw this out. You can come up with a plan. You can represent the pieces of chocolate however you want. You can use different forms. Everybody's got different approaches here. And I see some really interesting techniques here that I want to revisit when we come back to our next break. Some are using one operation. Others are, we see some models now happening here. Okay. When we come back, I want to share some of the work that our students are putting forward and how they're thinking this problem out. And leading into our third info gap question. Back here at Longfellow Elementary with our 5th and 6th graders attacking the info gap. When we last left off in our previous segment, Ryan had a 1/2 pound of chocolate. He was dividing it into 4 equal groups. And because they had come up with the information they needed, they were able to explore different strategies. And what was fascinating was how many people went with a visual model to try to work through this problem. And I want to share an example of that, if that's okay, right over here. We were looking at yours. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself, please? Shatice had a wonderful diagram she started to lay out here. What she did was she took a circle, shaded in 1/2, and then broke it up into 4 equal parts. Then figured out that there were 8 parts total altogether. So if she took the 1/2, that was really the same as 4 out of 8, or 4/8. And so one of those parts ended up just being 1/8. So each equal part ended up being 1/8 of a pound. So it was wonderful to see that. There are some students who started exploring how to divide with fractions, and sometimes that can be a little bit tricky. I did want to share one example over here. Could you introduce yourself as well?
Nevaeh.
Nevaeh started to write this out, and what she did was she actually found an equivalent over here for this. So she ended up doing 4 divided by 8, and ended up working out through. She set it up 1/2 divided by what ended up being 4, and so she was able to move things around. So there's some flexibility when it comes to dividing fractions that's really interesting. So we're at our final stop of the day. We're at question number 3, and I wanted to introduce our final hot seat. Could you go ahead and tell us your name, please?
My name is Valentina.
Valentina's here with question number 3. She's got the data, and everybody else is going to see the problem. Valentina, are you ready?
Yes.
Then here we go with our final and perhaps our most challenging infographic question of the day. Move it ahead in 3, 2, 1, go. Again, I cannot read it to you. You're on your own. Now, as they're seeing the question, we'll let you see the data with Valentina. Start writing and thinking about what information you need to be able to answer this question. And think about how you might approach it visually, with an algorithm, with numbers. What is your plan? And if you have this plan, what information do you need? How are you going to draw this out? What does this visual look like? So, let's start asking for some information. What do you need to know from Valentina? We're going to go right over here first. Go ahead.
How much juice did he pour?
So, how much juice does he pour? Now, can we be a little bit clearer on how much does he pour? Are we talking about how much he's starting with, or how much he's putting into each cup?
How much he's putting into each cup?
And I feel like that's the question we're trying to solve, right? And it'd be great if we could just ask that question and get the answer. However, do you know how much is in each cup? If that's not there, then you have to be able to say, I don't have that information.
I don't have that information.
She does not have that information, which, by the way, is good information, because it means we can ask another question. Let's go over here.
How many ounces of juice does Marco have?
So, how many ounces of juice does Marco have? Do you have that information?
Yes.
Okay.
Marco has 22 ounces of juice.
Ooh, okay, interesting. Pencils coming to paper right now. Very interesting. Plans coming together, light bulbs in our minds going off, pop, pop, popping. Very good. Okay. What other information do you need? Let's go to our original hot seat. Leah, go ahead.
What's the equal amount of juice?
So, do you know the equal amount of juice? I feel like that's very similar to what you asked, right? Do you know how much is in each cup?
No.
Do you have that information?
No.
So you have to be able to say.
I do not have that information.
But good try. It's the second time we tried asking that question. Hey, if we don't ask, we never get the answer. What other information do you need here? Let's go right over there.
How many cups does Marco have?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. How many cups does Marco have? Do you have that information?
Yes.
Okay.
Marco has 5 cups.
Ooh, very interesting. And we can see with that, some people are starting to work this out. So, people are starting to formulate some answers on this. We see some work being laid out. We see some people actually rewriting the problem to put that information in. That's really interesting. That means that they need to see the whole picture before they jump in and start solving this as a word problem. Now, there's also some reasoning happening here. And what I think is interesting is that most people see 2 numbers in a word problem, and they're naturally drawn to multiply them. And I think it's for 2 reasons. One is because sometimes numbers just look like they should be multiplied. But that's why it's so important to go back into the problem. If we are pouring equal amounts of juice into each cup, what type of problem does that usually signify? If we're taking a whole amount and putting it into smaller groups, it sounds like a division problem. And I think the issue with a lot of you guys is that you're saying, well, I can't divide 22 by 5. Unless we reframe this perhaps. Maybe instead of thinking as 22 divided by 5, we think about this in a different form. How else can we write division? As a fraction. So if I write 22 divided by 5 as a fraction, what would that look like? 22 fifths. Now, as that is right there, that's correct. We could put 22/5 ounces into each cup, but nobody talks like that. That doesn't make a lot of sense to us. However, can we rewrite this in a different form that's more familiar?
Yes.
Mixed number? So what is 22/5 as a mixed number? Well, we could start off by figuring out how many 5s go into 22, right? So that's 4. Now, what's left? How many fifths do we have left? 2. So we have 2/5 left? So 22 divided by 5 is 4 and 2/5, because 22 divided by 5 is 22/5, which then turns into a mixed number. So that means that each cup has 4 and 2/5 ounces inside. Thank you for joining us as we attack the info gap.